Este es un espacio patrocinado por T&BAO, la mejor oferta en nuestra ciudad, en Denver, Colorado. So, hello baseball lovers. So today we have a beautiful interview with this amazing journalist, is my friend. So Patrick Lyon of DNVR. So he covered Rockies. He know about MLB, about baseball, about history. So he's amazing. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Abel. I've been a fan of your work for a while, and we've been coming to Coors Field for years now. And so finally, to put this on wax, to sit down together officially, I'm excited. This is fun.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So we want to start about talking about our passion, baseball. Okay. So the first question is about the topic of this interview is what means the baseball in American culture?
Man, where do I begin? I mean, baseball is known as the national pastime because there was a point in the late 1800s in which it was a game that wasn't a professional sport just yet, and it was a game that people played at picnics, and the entire country participated in it. It was a pastime. It was how you passed the time. Life was a lot slower. There were no cell phones. There's no television. Everything was a lot calmer, and people would go out to the park. Of course, it evolved into a ballpark. They'd go out to a park, lay out a blanket, and watch the game of baseball as it eventually evolved, similar to the history of America, how it evolved over time to become what it is today. And so that's essentially the origins of baseball in America, and it became one of the top sports, the top team sports in the country. I mean, boxing and horse racing probably being the other 2/3 of the stool, if you will, of American sports. But baseball was that first team sport that really got the country enthralled. And, it was the World Series back when it was just all American players. So it really wasn't a world involved, but it was still teams from different cities all around the country. It was really unlike anything at the time. And it still kind of remains that to this day. Obviously, the NFL, NBA, NHL, soccer, even with the MLS. There are other sports now, but baseball for so many people and so many families around our country and the world, baseball is still that number one sport, that first thing that they can remember, which is just a ball in their crib. Baseball was first and most important to them and their family.
Yeah, so baseball is tradition in America. So baseball has more than 100 years. It was the first one. So and I think baseball have a lot different things, but which one is people go to the stadium? More than other sports. I mean, for example, it's 162 games per regular season, 81 games at home. So, no any sport that's happened.
Yeah, that's one of the beautiful things about baseball. You're right, is that it feels like it's always there. Now, right now, the NFL seems like it's the top sport, and even when there's not games, you're watching college football players just run the 40-yard dash, bench press. And it's nonstop. But baseball's actually there where you could go watch the game for about 8 months of the year, right? Spring training starts in February. So baseball is always there in the summer, right? Again, MLS is in the conversation, but there's no NFL, there's no NBA, there's no NHL. When you need an event to do, you come out to the ballpark, you relax, you have some beers, you have some hot dogs. Again, other kind of cornerstones of America, right, of things that people enjoy here. Or you can just turn on your television and you can watch baseball when there's not other competitions going on. So that's part of the beauty. You're right, 162 games. We saw last night Ezequiel Tovar struck out 4 times, first time in his career. Guess what? He has a chance today to go out and hit 4 doubles. He has a chance to have 2 home runs, right? And just like that bad game that he had last night, it's gone. It's erased. Whereas with the NFL, you got to wait a week for another game to change the story, to change history in a sense. Baseball, it's there every single day, and that's one of the beautiful things for both the players and for those of us that watch the game. We get a chance to watch something new every single day.
So, so we're talking about baseball was the first, again, the king of sports. So, but that started to change a little bit. So what happened in 60s and 70s that baseball started to lose a little bit, the position?
Yeah, that's a good question. It definitely seemed to kind of take a step back just a little bit. I think, again, depending on the household, there's still a lot of families that say, no, we're a baseball family. We follow the other sports, but baseball is still number one. But I think, again, the NFL just continuing to do what it does and kind of embracing a different part of American culture of tailgating and maybe drinking more beer and just the aggressiveness of football. Baseball isn't, quite as aggressive. There's a very funny George Carlin stand-up comedy bit where he compares football and baseball, and football is just, it's played on the gridiron, it's rough. And baseball, it's played in a park. And the goal is to go home. We're just trying to go home and be safe. And, I think just the country as it evolves, it maybe becomes more aggressive. We have plenty of aggression in our history's past in the United States of America. That being said, I think just those other sports might have done a good job of marketing it themselves. Baseball still seems to have a bit of a problem with that. That's also part of the beauty of baseball. Not one player can change a game. In the NFL, we know you get a good quarterback, all of a sudden you could go to the Super Bowl. In basketball, you get 3 good players, really good players, you can go to the finals. In the case of the Nuggets, you need 1 superstar, Nikola Jokic, and you can go to the finals. Whereas baseball, there's 9 guys on a field at a time. There's a DH in the dugout. There's an entire bullpen. There's a lot more to it. 162 games. It's a marathon. There's a lot more to it. And I think for some people that might be too much. NFL's got the 16, now 17 weeks. Basketball season seems to have gotten a little longer, same with NHL. But baseball is there every single day. For some of us, that's wonderful. I love it. For others, it might be too much. And I think over time, as you said, 60s, 70s, it kind of became, less and less sport. It's also harder to play as a kid. Basketball, you need a hoop and a basketball. You can play by yourself. I don't know how you can play baseball by yourself, right? Football, you just need a football. Just you can throw, have a game of catch. That's how you start at least. Hockey's a little bit harder as well, but you could do that on the street. Baseball, you need more than just one person to be able to do it and kind of have that practice. So I think it's a combination of all those things over time. For baseball, maybe losing that top spot as the official national pastime for the U.S.
So I am a journalist with I'm lucky, so for being here, covering MLB. But I discovered that in American baseball culture, baseball is more than MLB, So what about the baseball college? Because the culture is big, it's very interesting. So some American people watch more baseball college than MLB. Why? So what does that mean?
Yeah, I think for a lot of folks in the U.S., and I imagine this is probably true in Europe when it comes to soccer, they look at professional athletes saying, you're making more money than pretty much everyone in my family combined together in our life, and you're making that in 1 year. College baseball, now obviously with NIL, players can make a little bit of money, but college baseball doesn't see that. It's more pure. They're playing the game just to win. They don't, they're not going to win, they're not going to get $1 million. They're not going to sign a contract. They don't want to get traded to another place. They're playing just because they love the game of baseball. They're still kids at heart, right? And so many of them are still under the age of 21, right? They're adults at 18, but they're not 21 yet. So they're still kids. They still have that youthful enthusiasm to them. And again, they're not making millions of dollars. So it's a little bit different in that way, where it's about the fun. It's about still contains the spirit of the game, right? And I think a lot of people can get behind that just a little bit. You can get up a little bit more closer to the players, talk with them, have conversations. The game's over, you might even be able to walk out on the field and just say hi to some of them. Whereas here, we've got fences and we've got netting, and hey, you're making millions of dollars. I bought a $40 ticket. I would love to just get you to sign this ball. In college baseball, you can have a little bit more than that. You might know them. You might know the players' parents or their sister, whatever it might be. So I think you can kind of fall in love with more of the stories because it's not just a typical millionaire playing a game and they only care about is the paycheck. It's about just the love of the game, and I think that's the pull for a lot of people with college baseball.
So, sometimes I feel that American people love, justice. So sometimes in MLB, you big teams, a lot of money, so, and you have poor teams or something like that, so, but in college baseball, it's more equal, so that has sense.
Yeah, that's true. You see it in college basketball too, right? Where you've got, oh, sorry, baseball, I thought was going to come and hit us. In college basketball, right, you've got, with March Madness, you got teams that are like, they're the 50th best team, and yet they're beating some of the best in the game. And I think a lot of that is true for college baseball, where you don't necessarily know. There are those powerhouse schools, but that is part of the beauty of baseball because there's so many games. On any given day, any team can beat any other team. And it's not necessarily, as some people would describe it, these mercenaries of like, hey, I'm a billionaire, and I'm going to go and get this guy for $100 million, and I'm going to sign this kid out of Venezuela or Dominican Republic, give him a bunch of money, and then I'm going to just trade him to bring in another superstar guy, and I got all these best players that I took from all over the place. It's just a group of young 18, 19, 20-year-old kids who are learning how to be adults. They want to play the game at the next level. Some of them are not. Some of them are going to maybe just become coaches. Could be the end of their playing career. And again, it's about that love of the game, and that's just so beautiful about college baseball.
So the other point that I think I discovered living here is I think baseball is the sport of the people. I'm gonna explain why. Because sometimes we think the most people in America live in metropolis, in big cities, and that's not true. The more people in America live in rural, in farms. And when you go there, you see a lot baseball stadiums. What do you think about it?
Yeah, that's a great point. Minor league baseball and independent baseball, they have similarities and they have differences. But you're right, it still exists. There are still places right now. Here we are at Coors Field, with a capacity of just over 50,000 with some standing room only seats. And yet there are places tonight on a Tuesday night that are going to get 5,000, 10,000 people in a smaller town to go watch young 21, 22-year-old guys who even you and I don't know their names yet because they're not at the big league level. They're still playing for the love of the game. They're still trying to make a name for themselves. And there's 160 different cities, 120 now, different cities around the United States. You even got a team in Canada as well. Someday maybe we'll have some minor league baseball in Puerto Rico. Or in Mexico City. The Mexican League also is going really strong as a minor league. So you're right, there are these other smaller pockets that, it might not be Coors Field, it might not be Major League Baseball, it might not be Chris Bryant, it might not be Charlie Blackmon, but maybe they're the next Chris Bryant, maybe they're the next Charlie Blackmon, and you can go to the ballpark smaller with your small town and your friends and the people you went to high school with or your family, and it's more affordable too, right? You can afford to buy a couple beers and go to a few games and watch players who may someday become the next Chris Bryant. And you can say you saw them before they were ever in the major leagues, before they even got their first hit. They were down in the minors. They were young players. They were learning the game. And you're right, that happens in small towns all around the United States.
So that's amazing. Yeah. So the other thing is I love, the organization about baseball in America. Sometimes in our countries, I'm from Venezuela in Latin America, if you gonna be player, you have to stop to study. It's a different country, different culture. But in America, education and sport is together. That's amazing, and it's an organization. So, in your opinion, how American culture got this?
That's a great question. I don't really know exactly where that began. Going back to what we were talking about earlier with baseball being the national pastime, there's a period of time in which if you were a baseball player, that wasn't a good thing. That was like, oh, that's kind of weird to be, taking trains to different cities. They were kind of grungy. people, it wasn't maybe as respected like it is today. But you're right, the education has definitely become, a major part of it with college baseball, obviously. That you want your young high school players. Some of the high school guys will get drafted by teams, and you'll see them in the majors. But what if you don't get drafted? Now you have to go to college. So you do need to make sure that you have somewhat of an education. You also have these teams that are putting paperwork in front of you that says, here's how much we're going to pay you. Here's what you need to do. If you do something that we don't allow, you lose that contract. So you need to know what that paperwork says in that fancy language. And if you don't, you need to be educated enough to maybe trust the right people and understand how they can break that down for you so that you don't sign something that you shouldn't or get yourself in a bad deal. Because as a professional athlete, once you get to a certain level, people want things from you, right? They want to take things from you, or they want to try to use you maybe to make a little bit of money themselves, right? That's not always the case, but it's hard to know who's maybe more trustworthy than others. And if you have a good education, you can figure out, hey, this person is good. I know I can kind of trust them a little bit. This person, I'm not sure. Let me reread that paperwork maybe 2-3 times. Let me give it to a lawyer friend. Little things like that. Just making good choices and knowing, should I really be out at 2 o'clock in the morning at a club? Making those kind of decisions. And there's people that have college degrees that have made bad choices too. So you certainly don't need to go to college to know that nothing good happens after midnight. So, but you're right. I think there is definitely a good connection between the athlete and an education and being the student. And Jackie Robinson actually was one of the first people who had that. Obviously serving in the military for the U.S., but also going to UCLA and being a really smart guy. Did wonders for civil rights and also helped the Brooklyn Dodgers.
So the other question I have is about I see in baseball in America, so you have maybe, I want to know your opinion, more integration about the different immigrants around the world. So America is a country of immigrants, But for example, I see in minor leagues, in MLB, you have more representative from different countries, more than NBA, more than another sports, So I think this is amazing. What do you think about it?
No, that's a beautiful thing. This last spring we saw the World Baseball Classic, and you have players from all over the world, playing the game of baseball and trying to spread that so we can be in even more places. Because you're right, a lot of Latin American countries, Venezuela, Dominican Republic, Colombia, some players from Japan, South Korea, not very many that actually come out of China. That's one of those countries that, with so many people, you would think maybe there would be a major league player. India, largest population, around essentially, and yet we've yet to have a player from India. Africa, large continent. So all of those places, there's still room for even more diversity. I think it's wonderful that baseball is one of those games that you can learn to play just about anywhere. And in Latin America, and you probably know this, baseball can be expensive for all the equipment. But if you have a broom handle and a bottle cap, you can play a game like baseball, right? Me and the high school that I went to, we only had so many baseballs, so we would take old socks and we would wrap them up in duct tape, and that's it. We had a bat, and we could hit that ball and practice and work on our swing. And so you can still have those elements. In fact, one of my favorite games as a kid, we would just have a brick wall, and we'd have a red rubber ball, and we'd just throw the ball against the wall and just try to catch it and make a game out of that. And I think you're seeing that in so many different countries around the world. If you don't have the certain financial advantages that are here in America, you can still learn the basics of the game. I think Major League Baseball can do an even better job of incorporating more countries and having players from all over the world. I think we're really only scratching the surface because you see them from the same countries, but we should be seeing maybe even more from different places in South America. Venezuela is one of the few places. Brazil has a couple players, right? Yan Gomes is one. But other than that, you go Brazil, there should be more baseball players. And I think some of that responsibility is on Major League Baseball to invest in Brazil and to start up some academies and spread the game out and get some little leagues down there too, so that the young kids can learn how to play it. And then they can pass it down to the next generation, and their grandkids can play baseball because, believe it or not, that's how baseball got its start right here in America, is passing it down from one generation to the next.
So we was talking about the history, the beginning of the baseball. Was the sport number one, but that's changed a little bit. But I feel the last years the MLB is trying to be again in the first position. Maybe it does not happen, exactly at the beginning, but they try. For example, the social medias in MLB, it's amazing. So I don't know if you know, but the copyright is less. They have more. I don't know how can. Yeah, exactly. In other sports, you upload a video and they down. In baseball, you can put it. So the MLB is trying to the expansion of the baseball. So what do you think about it?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I think because baseball started out as number one and was number one for so long, and then even when it was number two, hey, number two's pretty good as well. You say, well, it's not broke, so we're not going to fix it. And maybe there was some stubbornness to evolve, right, and to adapt, and eventually, we saw in 1995, hey, you know what? You don't just have to win the division. You could be a wild card. You could be the second best team in your division, and you should go to the postseason. That's how the Rockies have gotten in all 5 times, as being kind of an also-ran. And now, you're right, with social media kind of, giving people more freedom, content creators, to use their content, MLB's content, but also the new rules that we've seen this year. Pitch clock. Baseball is a sport without a clock, right? Just play, go have fun. And yet, now we have a clock, and it's good. The baseball needed some of those changes, some of those things to ban the shift so that you couldn't, put all of your defenders on one side of the field. Now you got to stand where you were supposed to stand 150 years ago as the game kind of was originally created. So I think baseball, you're right. I kind of decided with Rob Manfred that, you know what, we're doing well. We're still doing pretty good, but we can be doing a lot better. So let's change some things. And the changes for, I think, some traditional people in baseball might have thought, I don't know, this is too much. But I think they're seeing now that, no, it's still keeping the game pure. It's just creating these little rules, and you don't even notice it. Like, the bases are bigger. I'd be curious how many people, when they come to the ballpark, actually look and go, hey, wait a minute, first base is bigger than I remember. You don't even notice it. The netting that's up in front of the dugout or behind the dugout, that was never there before. Now people go to games, they don't even realize that the netting is there. So I think that all of those changes with social media, the rule changes, has made the game more exciting so that baseball can take back that top spot and truly be America's pastime once again.
Yeah. So the other point is about the TV, the television. So I feel baseball is trying to conquer the TV. I'm gonna give you an example. For example, about the colors of the uniform. At the beginning of the baseball is just white, maybe white and red, white and black, that's it. Right now is happy colors, you know what I mean? So what do you think about it?
Yeah, no, I think that's great. Again, that's something that a lot of the other sports were doing, and baseball was staying very traditional. Like, hey, this was our logo for 100 years. We're going to keep it exactly like that, and that's okay. But let's switch things up a little bit. The City Connect uniforms is something that we've seen here in Colorado. Everyone knows Rockies colors, purple, black, and white. Well, now they've got a jersey that's got green in it, and it jumps out. And they only wear like once a week when they're at home. So it's a special occasion. And again, it's something that when you see that as a fan, it catches your eye. And part of the idea with the City Connect is so that people will wear those jerseys when they're walking around the street, and it looks good and looks fashionable, and it looks hip, right? And it doesn't look like a shirt or a jersey that their grandfather wore 100 years ago. So it's part of baseball evolving and getting with the times and saying, yeah, let's have some more colors, let's have some more vibrancy, let's have some more characters, let's be open to guys flipping their bats, being excited. We saw a benches clearing incident because of excitement, right? And that's not a bad thing. I think that's a good thing. We need that. We need characters. We need things to jump out now, right? People have shorter attention spans. And so as much as you might want to watch sports, you could turn on a baseball game and say, it just goes too slow. Now, it's going a little bit faster. We're not waiting for guys doing their batting gloves and tapping their feet and looking out to center field and squinting for 15, 20, 25 seconds. Now, there's a pitch, and then there's another pitch. And now the guys' colors are a little bit more vibrant. They look good, and they're able to do different things with their cleats and their batting gloves and the tape around their bat. So I think all of those things, you're right, making it look better visually. The aesthetics definitely have improved in the last few years in MLB.
So, Lion, so that's my last question. So, what is the future of this beautiful game, in your opinion?
You and me, we're the future. No, we're not. We're too old at this point. No, I think baseball is going to continue to be what it is, and I think this is really the changes that we saw this year. I think are going to do wonders for the next batch of changes, whatever that is. And again, we might not see changes to the actual game on the field for another 50 years. Don't know when that's going to be. Don't know what those rules will be. But I think it's going to give baseball that freedom to say, let's try to do things differently. The NBA, they did a couple things differently. NHL, NFL, we need to start doing some of those things too. We shouldn't look at ourselves as, hey, we're a 150-year-old product. Let's keep doing it the way we did back in the 1880s. They shouldn't be doing that. They need to evolve. And so I think we're on our way to even more evolution, to having more players, more diverse rosters with players from all over the world, and it's going to be exciting. I mean, I've been a baseball fan and I've loved the game since I was a kid, and I'm never going to stop. And I welcome all these changes, and I welcome how it evolves, because as it gets different, it gets better. And I think it gets better, and so the next generation, they're going to do new things. They're going to do different things that right now, if we saw it, we'd go, I don't know if that's a good thing. But in the future, it will be a good thing, and just got to roll with those punches. And so we don't know what the future will hold, but as long as it's baseball, it's going to be a good future.
Yeah, so Mr. Patrick, so please can you tell us how we can follow you in your social media?
Yeah, well, I've got articles up at thednvr.com, so it's like Denver but with no vowels, thednvr.com, and also follow me on Twitter at Patrick D. Lyons, where I talk a lot about the Rockies and a bunch of random pieces of information that seem very quirky and unimportant, but are just kind of fun. And I like having fun with baseball.
Well, baseball lovers, so thank you so much for your time. It was our pleasure. We're talking about our passion, baseball, about the past, about the future. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Este es un espacio patrocinado por T&BAO, la mejor oferta en nuestra ciudad, en Denver, Colorado. Soy el periodista Abel Flores, acreditado para cubrir el béisbol de Grandes Ligas desde Colorado para el mundo, y te invito a seguirme en mi cuenta Amantes del Béisbol 2021, donde encontrarás contenido exclusivo, entrevistas, informes, reportajes, comentarios exclusivos de nuestros peloteros Grandes Ligas de Venezuela, República Dominicana, México, Puerto Rico, Panamá. Un contenido exclusivo que no encontrarás en ninguna otra plataforma, ni en televisión, ni en radio, ni en prensa. No esperes el noticiero de la noche, no tienes que leer la noticia del día de ayer. En esta plataforma multimedia te brindamos toda la información. Amantes del Béisbol 2021.
For it's 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out at the old ball game.